was just frightening that something serious had happened on our doorstep.
This was a crime of passion. Everyone was gripped by it and wanted to know what happened.
It's quite unusual for somebody to have this sexual preference, but it's also extremely dangerous.
To hear someone doing that, stabbing someone ferociously when they're dead or dying, it was something quite horrific.
There's a heavy price to pay for that, all because of jealousy.
This was an unusual murder. It had sex, violence, jealousy, betrayal. It had all the hallmarks of a crime thriller.
My mum is heartbroken. She'll never be the same person ever again.
A quiet Sunday morning in the sleepy Hampshire district of Lee Park.
At 8 o'clock in the morning, the police received a 999 call from a very distressed young lady.
Somebody's had their throat slit at an address in Lee Park.
The police had to go to the house very quickly.
Having a call of this nature is highly unusual. Is this false and malicious? Is this somebody just having a prank on the police's behalf? I think the officers will be going there with an open mind, but with some trepidation as to what are we going to face when we get to this address. Police arrive at the address and they knock on the door. They can hear dogs barking and the door is opened.
Hello. You all right?
Yeah.
What's going on?
The police officer went inside the house.
Don't close the door.
One of the officers goes upstairs.
Had some kind of strange, interesting call about somebody having had their throat slit.
And they find a body in the bedroom.
The residents of Botley Drive soon find out something is afoot.
The place was swarming with police vans, police cars, whatever. They were all over the place.
You know, you couldn't see this side of the road because all the police cars were parked there, and you think something's happened.
It was quite overpowering, and you sort of wanted to know what was going on, but you didn't want to ask.
And you could see the activity, scenes of crime, and pathologists and all that sort of thing were there. And it was just frightening that something serious had happened on our doorstep.
Word spreads to the local Portsmouth press.
So we received a tip-off that there was a serious incident taking place in Botley Drive. We sent a reporter out to go and investigate. The reporter went down to the scene, spoke to locals in the area. So it's quite clear this was a major incident. So there's lots of rumours swirling around. Some people thought possibly a stabbing, but it was all a big mystery.
The house is sealed off and the crime scene secured.
Normally when a police tent and cordon is erected, it normally means one thing, which is that someone's been killed.
The last thing on my mind was that it was a murder. To find out at the end that it was somebody had been stabbed, you know, it was quite shocking.
Yeah, it's awful. It's right on your doorstep. Think of it not happening in this area, but one day it could be.
Everyone just said, oh, there's loads of police, I don't know what's going on. And then that's when the speculation came and the rumours came.
No one actually knew what had happened. It was just an incident that caused a lot of fear, basically, and shock. There was a lot of questions being asked. People were concerned, and some people felt unsafe as well, because potentially there was a murder on the loose. So it was an incident that brought the community together and caused a lot of concern.
Soon, senior detectives arrive on the scene.
In the background, there'll be checks going on. You know, do we know anything about that address? Is it an address we go to on a regular basis? Are there people living in that address that the police will know that they've dealt with before? You go with an open mind, but if there's no information coming back to suggest that you know, this address is well known, we're always going there for domestics. You need to sort of have your wits about you.
At this address in Botley Drive lives 27-year-old mother of one, Shay Groves.
She had a young child who was 5 years of age. She was living with a friend. She wasn't working. From the age of 11, she was wearing hearing aids in both the ears because she was partially deaf.
In the last 6 months, Shay's been in a relationship with dad of two, Frankie Fitzgerald.
In February 2022, they met at a pub in Caution, and it looks like they clicked. He sent her a number, she rang him. At that stage, she was just getting out of a relationship, but she wanted something exciting, and Frankie came along and gave her the excitement.
But investigators uncover a string of texts, suggesting all is not well with the budding romance.
There was evidence of Frankie being dominant towards Shay. There were lots of text messages to Shay telling her what to do.
He had a jealousy towards Shay Groves' ex-partners, and he felt that she was actually seeing other men behind his back. There was a sense of distrust. She distrusted him because she still felt that he was still going out and getting in touch with his ex-partner.
It was established that around about April time, so 4 months into the relationship, that by now it really deteriorated, where Frankie's obsession and jealousy was getting worse and worse. Quite often it would end up in a really heated argument, to the point where we know Frankie had threatened violence against Shay and also threatened violence against her ex-partner as well. So much so that Shay was concerned that she shared this information with her friend because I think she feared for her safety at times.
A background check on Frankie reveals he has history.
In the past, there were cases of domestic abuse that the police had investigated, and I think he'd been convicted on one occasion.
Frankie had been before the magistrates' court in 2018 because he had sadly assaulted his ex-partner. And not only that, he had also damaged a mobile phone, the consequence of which he pleaded guilty to assaulting the ex-partner and stealing her mobile phone. There was a restraint order against Frankie imposed in 2018 that he should not be in contact with the ex-partner.
As details of the couple's relationship emerge, it's not long before police confirm they are in fact dealing with a murder.
The body is wrapped up in a duvet on bin liners in the bedroom with serious neck injuries that were non-survivable.
In Lee Park, Havant, at the home of 27-year-old Shay Groves, Hampshire Constabulary have discovered a body. The victim, 25-year-old Frankie Fitzgerald. The father of two has been stabbed 20 times.
Frankie underwent a forensic post-mortem. This is whereby an autopsy is carried out and forensic evidence is also captured from the deceased, but also a trained pathologist can try and interpret some of the injuries. And what was noted was that Frankie had had this fatal blow to the neck, but then there was also 19 other injuries around the chest area that wouldn't have been fatal because he was probably already dead by the time the first stab wound went into the neck.
The evidence would have suggested that effectively the main cutting that caused his death occurred around the throat area because it went across from left to right and cut the voice box, putting it simply. And then it caused torrential bleeding. It was so fierce, he would have bled out.
While forensic officers continue to comb the scene, a police presence is stepped up in the area. to calm this close-knit community reeling from the news.
It's frightening to think that that sort of thing happened. And it's a real friendly neighbourhood.
It was a sort of strange quietness, like you'd lost somebody. It was like a cloud had come down over everything, you know, and everybody was under that cloud.
Several miles from the murder scene lives Frankie's family, tragically unaware of the events unfolding in Lee Park.
I was at my mother-in-law's having a barbecue. Then my mum turned up and the first thing she said to me was, "Have you heard from Frank?" And I said, "Mum, he's probably asleep." I said, "He's probably sleeping a hangover. His phone was off, his phone's never off." My mum was probably there for about an hour when she got a phone call from the police to say, "I'm ringing about your son." And my mum said, "What one?" And they said, "Frankie." So I took the phone and they said, "Is this Carla, Frankie's sister?" And I said, "Yes, like what's going on?" So they said, "We need to come and see you."
The police officers make their way to the family home.
We was outside and my mum was obviously pacing up and down. They asked us to go inside and go into the bedroom. And the words that they used was, "We found a deceased man in a house in Havant with a slit to his throat." And my mum just collapsed on the floor. And I was just shouting, saying, no, this is not true. It was just bizarre, like, my little brother's been murdered. I still can't get my head around it, but it was just awful seeing my mum like that.
He had 2 children from previous relationships. And yes, in the past, he was known to the police for domestic abuse, but it appeared that he'd been turning his life around. You know, he'd moved on. He had a good relationship with his children and a good relationship with his children's mother.
He was an amazing dad. He always went out of his way to get what they needed or to see them and take them out for days. There wasn't a day really that I didn't see him. So I just miss his big grin he had on his face, knocking my door really loud, and I'd know it would be Frankie knocking, or when he went slamming the door. He was just amazing, and he didn't know how amazing he was. And I wish I could tell him.
The family were absolutely devastated, but everyone was rallying round to help the family, help his friends, and to raise as much money as possible for his funeral.
Meanwhile, detectives have been focusing on the bedroom where Frankie's body was found. Items discovered at the home of girlfriend Shay Groves begin to ring alarm bells.
She had numerous pictures on her wall of famous killers. You had Charles Bronson, Myra Hindley, Rose West, the Yorkshire Ripper, numerous books. This is not normal.
Shay was someone who had an interest in knives. She had axes.
And scenes of crime officers find a potentially lethal air gun in one of Shay's bedroom drawers.
On the right side of the bed, she had a coffin-style bookcase, which had all the gang killings and gangland people and so forth.
It was very dark and twisted, I suppose.
Elsewhere in the house, even coffee cups reveal this morbid fascination.
Shay Groves was someone who was obsessed almost with true crime documentaries. She had a fascination with serial killers, killing.
We've noticed from looking at previous social media pictures that over the last couple of years, her appearance started to change. She went from wearing sort of bright clothes and being sort of quite outgoing to started going in on herself and becoming almost gothy. Dark clothing, lots of dark makeup. She started to have tattoos, very visible tattoos. So visible you can see them on her face and on her neck. So there's obviously something going on in the background there that's making her change her appearance like that.
She became a goth, as we understood it, as a result of her becoming friendly with a partner who was her boyfriend around that stage. They were both goths. They had a weird sense of humor, in a sense that they were dressing up in goth clothes and all that. They also were practicing pagan practices, and she had a Celtic dagger with her, which was supposed to be for pagan practices.
Back at the crime scene, police uncover more disturbing evidence.
Also within Shay's home were a number of CCTV cameras. Now, ordinarily, a CCTV camera would be facing the outside, and it will be there as a crime prevention type of mechanism to stop intruders breaking into your house. But what was particularly strange about this case is that Shay actually had them set up inside the house.
Shay had CCTV video cameras in her bedroom, in the lounge, in the kitchen. The ones in the bedroom were used to record her and Frankie having sex. They would then watch these videos back and then carry out what they had seen.
The police recovered a number of videos.
There were CCTV footage of them committing violent sexual acts together. It involved sexual acts of what's known as BDSM, bondage, dominance, submission, and masochism.
What we established that was common between the two of them was that they had this almost unhealthy sexual interest, and it's unusual to try and find a partner that has the same sort of sexual preference as you. So the fact that these two had this thing in common made it quite unique, but also extremely dangerous.
Miss Groves had a passion for kinky sex, to the extent that she likes knives being used on her, knives being run over her, and so forth.
One of the elements of there was a thing called knife play. Now, this is where they would act out a sexual act where one of them is in possession of a knife and holding it to the other's throat whilst they have sexual intercourse.
The footage reveals these dangerous sexual games are fueled by Class A drugs.
Frankie and her very quickly got into the habit of cocaine. And cocaine became the center point of the relationships, whereby they were sniffing cocaine and having sex and videoing their sexual acts. They were exploring their sexual acts to the very limit with the use of cocaine and other things.
Shay and Frankie's mutual interest in rough sex and BDSM dominated the relationship. The boundaries became somewhat blurred, I think, with what they were doing. So there'd be a lot of role-playing. Shay would be someone who enjoyed being spoken down to and humiliated. Frankie would regularly spank her and talk to her in a derogatory fashion. And this was something that consumed the relationship and was the cornerstone of the relationship.
They signed what's known as a sexual contract. I called it the 50 Shades of Grey sexual contract because it resembled everything of it. In it, it gave Frankie the permission to wake up Shay Groves every morning with sex. It was signed by Frankie Fitzgerald, signed by Miss Groves, and countersigned by the friend.
One of the videos that the police recovered from the address was of a particularly brutal sexual act between the two parties, and that is really, really disturbing. With a knife, one doesn't have to describe any further how high risk that is, particularly when one of the parties or both of the parties may be high on cocaine or alcohol.
As detectives trawl on through Shay's sordid CCTV footage, they're drawn to something rather sinister. Her lethal Celtic dagger appears in the unlikeliest of places.
There were evidence that we found from CCTV footages where she actually puts the knife underneath her bed, underneath a pillow. On one occasion, after sex, Frankie Fitzgerald actually saw the knife and says, "Why do you have it? Do you intend to stab me in the throat?" And what is the coincidence of Frankie Fitzgerald saying, "I'm going to stab you in the throat," and Frankie Fitzgerald being actually stabbed in the throat later on within a few weeks?
Police have no option but to make an arrest.
What's going on? No, don't close the door.
They turned up and Shay Groves was there in her pink dressing gown, smoking a cigarette, acting as cool as you like.
This was an unusual reaction. When she was talking to the police officers, she was as if nothing was wrong.
It didn't appear surprising that the police were there. It's almost as if she knew they were coming.
Shay Groves told them that there was a body upstairs.
Absolutely no tears, nothing, no concern for him, anything of that nature. It was a chilling video, a chilling body-worn camera to actually watch.
Arrest on suspicion of murder. You do not have to say anything, but it may harm your defence if you do not mention when questioned something which you later rely on in court. Anything you do say may be given evidence. The necessity for your arrest is for a prompt and effective investigation. Okay.
But when the officers arrested her on suspicion of murder, she didn't put up a fight. She then directed the officers to say where the weapon was. And sure enough, there was this Celtic dagger still in the sink with blood on it.
Lee Park, Havant. 25-year-old Frankie Fitzgerald has been found dead with his throat slit in the bedroom of 27-year-old Shay Groves.
Mum is heartbroken. We haven't just lost Frankie, we've lost our mum too. She'll never be the same person ever again. Yeah, he was very special. He was special to everyone. And it's just a void that's going to be in the rest of our life. Well, our hearts are going to be broken for the rest of our life.
Arrest on suspicion of murder. You do not have to say anything, but it may harm your defence if you do not mention...
Mum of one, Shay, has been arrested on suspicion of murder.
After she was arrested, she was taken to the police station, and at the police station, she was seen by a registered nurse.
Shay was then subjected to a number of police interviews during the course of her time in custody.
She slowly went on to have legal advice. And during the course of the first interview, on the advice of a solicitor, she made no comment.
In the meantime, detectives have been questioning one of Shay's friends. In a bombshell interview, the friend reveals a strange video call she had from Shay straight after the killing.
You then have this bizarre situation where Shay's starting to giggle and saying, "Can you keep a secret? I've done something, can you keep a secret?" And she proceeds to walk upstairs, still on FaceTime with her friend, and then turns the camera to show her Frankie's lifeless body on the floor with clear stab wounds around the neck and says words to the effect of, "I've done him, I've done him." She's always described her as having a bit of a weird sense of humour. So initially she's thinking, is this one of these pranks that Shay might pull? You know, is this just some sort of weird thing that she's just trying to pretend that they've had some kind of game and Frankie's pretending to be dead? So she doesn't quite believe her, and you can see why. But Shay then gets the camera phone and actually puts it really close to Frankie's body, so she can really see the graphic images of the injuries that she's caused towards Frankie.
She was showing the blood spots on the books themselves and says, blood here, blood there, blood here. That's what the police officers found. What they also found when the first police officer went up to the room, apart from finding the body, they had this pungent smell of bleach, where there was an attempt to clean up the place, because the friend was telling the police officers when she was being video interviewed that she actually saw her with a bowl with water trying to clean the place. She had taken the camera towards the kitchen area, towards the sink, and shown her the knife where she used the murder weapon.
In the same video call, the friend claims Shay also admitted to stabbing Frankie while he slept. Detectives put this to Shay during her interview.
And so they were putting questions to Shay that effectively she had murdered Frankie in his sleep.
Her attitude during the second and third interview completely changed, because she was so arrogant. And she was using words like, "Look, don't waste my time." I'm paraphrasing it. "Don't waste my time. I know what I'm here for."
strangely, she started talking, and actually one of the questions she then fired back at the police officers was, well, if I killed him in his sleep, why is there no blood on the bed? As we know, Shay was obsessed with true crime documentaries. She would be aware of forensic evidence and how to dispose of forensic evidence. Now, what we do know is that Frankie's body had been moved and been wrapped up in a duvet. So I think the inference there is that it's likely that if Frankie was sleeping, he was sleeping on top of the duvet and he was stabbed, and she's then wrapped him in the duvet and then transported him from the bed to the floor on top of the bin liners. She's forensically aware because of her knowledge of all these true crime documentaries that she watches. She knows that by wrapping the body in bin liners, it's less likely to leak fluid into the house.
Shay effectively leaves no trace of Frankie's blood on the bed.
What is even more interesting about her demeanor was the fact that she's told the police officers, you will find things about us in the video. She says she had been suffering from the months of sexual abuse that she'd been suffering from Frankie Fitzgerald. The abuse in a sense that it was violent sex. She was raped by him. She didn't consent to rape.
Shay started to hint that she may have been a victim of sexual violence from Frankie, and that this attack was due to her defending herself.
Shay was now trying to form a defence, and that defence was self-defence. So in effect, what she is saying is that she was being attacked by Frankie, and in order to protect herself, she had to inflict harm on him to stop him harming her.
What happened was that he went towards her and grabbed her in the bed and strangled her, and she was losing consciousness. She then struggled to find something to hit him with, and she thought she found a box, and she was trying to hit him with the box. Turned out it was a knife, and she stabbed him. It was sheer arrogance, something that you don't normally find when someone is saying, I've been a victim of abuse, I've been a victim of coercive control, and I killed somebody. Not a shred of emotion.
Whilst looking into Shay's abuse claims, detectives dig deeper into the background of their suspect. Although she paints herself as the victim, the truth isn't quite what it seems.
We established that Shay would often carry a knife, and she would self-harm on occasions, small cuts in her legs and that kind of stuff. But also she would threaten violence against others, and there are a number of occasions that are reported whereby Shay had used violence against other people, or at least threatened violence against other people, and the fact that she secretly carried a knife with her wherever she went is a real concern.
Friends reveal Shay called her housemate Chucky after the knife-wielding killer doll in the horror film Child's Play, and more sinister details are revealed to the police.
It was a strange relationship. Shay had a lot of emotional control and influence over her. Her friend was subservient and would do whatever she wanted. She'd run errands, even put on Shay's socks for her.
She would effectively use her as a house mistress to look after the house, clean up, and on one occasion, I believe she was made to tie Shay's shoelaces for her. You know, that is strange behaviour.
And what Shay Groves did was that she treated her as a slave. Slave in every sense of the word, where she screamed at her, she got her to do her washing, ironing, cleaning, feeding her child, go out and buy food. The dynamics was in such a stage where she was effectively controlling her.
On a couple of occasions, Shay turned violent towards her as well.
On one occasion, she pulled her around the hair and dragged her throughout the house because the friend had gone out and had not told her where she was. On a second occasion, what she did was that she picked up a nail clip and hit her on the head that caused her to bleed. The friend saying she can blow hot and cold, she can be violent at 1 minute, and within seconds she can turn out to be a normal person.
The police identified controlling behaviour, but they also identified manipulative behaviour. And it transpired that Shay had told a number of people, including Frankie, that she was suffering from cancer and that she was undergoing treatment. And it just didn't exist. It was completely fictitious.
And that is the most vile thing that anybody can think about. And she's manipulating all this and trying to get sympathy, money, and all these kind of things on the pretext of cancer. It is a heinous act.
But according to her acquaintances, Shay's deceit didn't stop there.
One of the chilling and telling features about Miss Grove's personality was her ability to use these sexual footages that she had taken of her having sex with Frankie Fitzgerald, her ex-partner, to manipulate them and to blackmail them to do things. She actually manipulated Frankie Fitzgerald by saying she's going to publish this to the newspapers. There's one occasion where there is the CCTV footage that the police found, and she actually said, if I show this to the police, they will think that you are abusing me.
Shay made threats to post them on social media due to her jealousy and problems in the relationship with Frankie, and wanted to ruin his life.
Shay even sent the sex video to her friends.
It was showing a very violent sexual act taking place without the consent of the other party. So in effect, Shay was being raped by Frankie, and that just wasn't the case. The police were able to get the original footage of this video, and when they analysed it, it was clear that the footage had been edited by Shay.
It was consensual sexual acts, and what she had done is that she had manipulated a number of footages by cutting and pasting them out of time and sending them off to their friends, saying this is how he's been aggressive towards me.
Soon, detectives uncover a chat between Shay and a friend, accidentally picked up on her CCTV. In it, Shay discusses ways to cause Frankie serious damage.
Having received this information that Shay is getting to a point where she wants to either cause Frankie harm directly or get somebody else to cause harm towards Frankie, that really does start to rub against a defence of self-defence that she is starting to show. It's starting to now show a pattern of perhaps this is pre-planned. Jay Groves is charged with Frankie Fitzgerald's murder, and a trial date is set at Winchester Crown Court. She attends court. The charges are put towards her, and the defence claim that their client, Shay, is going to be pleading self-defence and also diminished responsibility. And so the prosecution now have to disprove that this was not a case of self-defence or a momentarily loss of control, that this was actually cold-blooded, pre-planned murder.
Six months after the killing of Frankie Fitzgerald in Lee Park, Havant, his girlfriend Shay Groves finally faces justice at Winchester Crown Court. The atmosphere is fever pitch.
There's a lot of public interest in the case, a lot of media there. This is obviously a big story, a national story. A woman who was interested in serial killers, gangsters, true crime. So this was an unusual case and had a lot of interest as a result.
Shay's plea remains not guilty.
And the defence was self-defence as a starting point, and if she was successful, it would have led to a full acquittal, so she would have walked out not guilty verdict. The two defences that reduces murder to manslaughter are loss of control and diminished responsibility. So she would still be sentenced, but the sentence would not be as high as a sentence for murder, which is a minimum term of life.
With the stakes so high, Frankie's sister Carla is also at the trial.
It was horrible. And obviously just straight after Christmas. Obviously the first Christmas without Frank. So yeah, it was really difficult. I had like an anxiety attack. I had to go outside. It was a bit much for me. I couldn't really deal with it. I was really nervous. Obviously, I've never been to a court or even a murder trial.
The prosecution needs to prove that Shay killed Frankie in cold-blooded murder.
In the bedroom, and usually a few weeks before the killing itself, the cameras have been taken down. So we had to rely on telephone evidence, WhatsApp messages, conversations, a camera that was in the kitchen, the housemaid's bedroom, noises in the background. And this, the police officers and we as a prosecution team sat down together and worked together to produce a timeline from the time Frankie Fitzgerald came into the house.
Using this patchwork of evidence, the court relives the last 24 hours of Frankie's life.
So on Saturday, the 16th of July, 2022, we know that Frankie goes to Botley Drive to visit Shay. They're taking cocaine, they've taken alcohol. Again, it's just building up to be this real pressure cooker environment.
I see the CCTV and her and Frankie were in the kitchen playing music and talking, and obviously the songs that he played were the songs he played with me, so that really, really hurt that they were the last songs he would ever hear. So yeah, that was really heartbreaking.
At about 3 o'clock in the morning on Sunday the 17th of July, Frankie and Shay are both still having arguments about ex-partners.
And obviously we heard her call him up to his own death.
She calls Frankie to come to bed. He goes upstairs and falls asleep. While Shay's going through Frankie's phone, she uncovers a message where a female purporting to be 13 years of age has been contacting Frankie through social media. Now, Shay clearly loses it as a result of seeing that message and gets extremely jealous. But what she didn't know was that Frankie had actually blocked that individual because of the age. And what she also didn't realise was this girl was in fact 17. But that was the final straw that broke the camel's back.
And within a few minutes later, there was the scream.
And she stabs him in the neck.
And then afterwards, she then delivered another 19 blows to his heart and chest area, all of which would have been fatal in themselves.
In a fit of rage, it was a brutal, brutal action by the defendant. And the friend said that she had sent a message to her at 5 o'clock in the morning saying that Frankie had left her and there was a big fight. Words to the effect like, he's gone, he's left for the day. The import of the message was that she was setting up a lie.
But then Shay changes tack, video calling her friend to gloat in the killing. And it was Shay's friend who decided to turn her in.
And the moment she called the police, it was the recording that we played to the jury, which had such a chilling effect, explaining what the defendant had told her about the lies she had created to set up an alibi.
Shay had made admissions to her in the FaceTime call saying that he was asleep and that's when she stabbed him. Shay had made various threats in the past to harm Frankie. If your victim is asleep, how can you feel threatened so much that you have to defend yourself by fatally stabbing somebody? The prosecution were able to show that self-defense just wasn't possible.
Next, it's the turn of Shay Groves herself to take to the stand.
She came across as a very assertive, very controlled, very informative, well-versed with the case. So she was the sort of person who could look after herself. And that portrayed a person who could not have lost control at all.
She came across as rather bolshy and cold and a bit arrogant. She was certainly giving it back to the prosecutor.
When she gave evidence, her reason for why she had told her friend that Frankie was asleep was because she was trying to protect him because of his reputation, children. She didn't want to say anything about him being excessively violent towards her. And now when she walked into the witness box, she was telling the real truth, which we did not accept.
And her version of the truth was that, you know, her and Frankie had been fighting.
She said she had been pinned on the bed, she was struggling to breathe.
She had reached out to get a money box, but accidentally grabbed a dagger and stabbed him in the neck. I mean, it's almost laughable listening to this account.
But the court is stunned by what Shay says next.
When she gave evidence, she actually admitted that she could actually see him gurgling with blood, and she stabbed him to prevent him from gurgling. In a sense, she was doing him a favor by sending him off.
It's quite a strange thing to hear in court, and to hear someone doing that, stabbing someone ferociously when they're dead or dying. It was quite harrowing to hear.
But in dealing with Shay's abuse claims at the hands of Frankie, there are even more harrowing moments for the jury.
There was a sequence of CCTV footages that we had to play to the jury. He was smacking her, and she was saying, "Yes, Daddy, what's my punishment, Daddy?" And he was having sex with her, and then she was crying. It was horrific to look at. One or two jurors actually were in tears when they saw this. But what the prosecution said, what the Crown said, was that this was all consensual.
She didn't really have a defence, to be honest. He was innocent. He didn't deserve to go like this. No one does.
What we told this jury was that this is a manipulative, jealous, cunning woman, and her jealousy led her to killing him. And that is the reason why he died. This is not a case of self-defense.
The jury retires to consider its verdict.
The jury retired for 4 days. To some people, it was the most agonizing 4 days because you didn't know what was going through their mind. When they came in, it was a hushed courtroom. And this is the point where it's like the drum roll moment.
The verdict was guilty. And it was just the best feeling ever.
And at that point, or in the moments afterwards, while Shay was still in the dock, she smiled, which I found something to be a rather strange reaction, considering she was now going to be spending many years behind bars.
My mum just broke down. Obviously, we were happy she got guilty, but never going to bring Frankie back.
Shay Groves is sentenced to life with a minimum term.
She was sentenced to 23 years, which is some sort of justice, but how many years she got, it's not the end for us.
So she'll be 50 years of age by the time she gets out. She's lost that relationship with her daughter. You know, there's a heavy price to pay for that, all because of jealousy.
He might be gone, but he's left the most amazing memories. Love. 2 beautiful children that will always live in him. And I will miss him for the rest of my life.